Sorry. Ah! Okay. I don't have my tripod, so I'm gonna have to do this kind of live. But let's have a book chat about those events in The Road. Eek. Okay, so once again, we start out our chapter kind of, you know, on the road as we do. The man and the boy, they have to keep going, and we really get still the danger of the blood cults on the road. So on page 103, the boy and the man are walking, and they saw a fire that somebody had made before, and the man says, "We need to get out of the road." "Why, Papa? Someone's coming." "Is it bad guys?" "Yes, I'm afraid so." "They could be good guys, couldn't they?" He didn't answer. He looked at the sky out of old habit, but there was nothing to see. "What are we going to do, Papa?" "Let's go." "Can we go back to the fire?" "No, come on, we probably don't have much time." "I'm really hungry." "I know. What are we going to do?" "We have to hole up, get off the road." "Will they see our tracks?" "Yes." "What can we do about it?" "I don't know." "Will they know what we are?" "What?" "If they see our tracks, will they know what we are?" He looked back at their great round tracks in the snow. "They'll figure it out," he said. Then he stopped. "We need to think about this. Let's go back to the fire." Okay. So, the boy, and it's kind of a slow progression, but he's always kind of swinging between being a little boy more and growing up. And whereas like in the beginning of the book, he was kind of more of that, you know, little, young, innocent type of boy who was more juvenile than anything. He was like, "Okay, Papa, okay." Now it's almost like, even though he's the same age, it's kind of like he's entering that, I don't know, terrible toddler stage where he's like questioning everything the man's doing. So, I mean, I just think about the one thing you can do when you're reading a book if you're having trouble engaging with some of the text is you can think about how you would be reacting in a situation that maybe you do understand in the book. So during this whole conversation, I was thinking, if I were the man, and I know he has to be patient because it's his son and they're in danger and all that stuff, but I would just be like, "Oh my God, I don't know what we're going to do. Like, shut up. We're going to be fine. We have to go. Stop questioning everything." But the man is really patient. But then the other thing you'll start to notice is from here on out, because we're about in the middle of the book, the man, I don't want to say he's deteriorating or declining, but he's not sort of that force that he was in the beginning of the book. He starts questioning himself a bit more, and like here, I mean, he spends all the time like, we gotta move, we gotta go, blah blah blah, and then the kid asks him the question about their tracks, and the man, he starts really thinking about what the boy said, like, you know, are they gonna follow us because of our tracks? And the man's like, "Yeah, we gotta stay here for a minute." So the other thing that they're contending with in this section is they're still contending with all of that, you know, starvation and hunger, because even the boy is like, "I'm hungry." And, you know, there's nothing they can do about that. So I think a lot of this mental state kind of comes from the fact that they are tired and hungry and a little bit delirious. Because on page 105, at the beginning of that little paragraph, they said they had no food and little sleep in 5 days. And that's when they see that grand house they were talking about. All right. So we're really going to go over the major plot event, which was the cellar. And that's why I asked you so deeply about it on the questions, is because this is where stuff's getting real. Like before, it was like, oh yeah, we have to be careful. And, you know, they had to fight the trucker, but that was one guy. But now they're kind of realizing the depth of their situation. So before they go in, they have to take a look at it. And the boy, once again, as he is with every single building, he's like, "I don't think we should go in there." And the man's like, "We'll be okay." So on page 106, When you go back, you can, I mean, once you read the cellar scene, and if you go back a few pages, you can kind of see, you know, the setup. And it's one of those things where, like, if you're watching a thriller movie and you watch it one time and then you go back and watch it a second time, you pick up on more things. So they approach the driveway. There's no tracks in the snow. The handmade brick of the house kilned out of dirt it stood on. So it was made so long ago that the brick was made out of, you know, the land it sat on, because they could do that. Peeling paint hanging in long dry sleevings down the columns and from the buckled soffits. A lamp that hung from a long chain overhead. The boy clung to him as they climbed the steps. One of the windows was slightly open, and a cord ran from it across the porch to vanish in the grass. He held the boy's hand, and they crossed the porch. Chattel slaves had once trod those boards bearing food and drink on silver trays. All right, so there's maybe a little bit of foreshadowing. So, number one, you can tell that they are in the South because this was probably, I mean, number one, it's so old that the bricks wouldn't have been brought in from somewhere else. They would have been made from the dirt and the land that they sat on. But also, you get the sense that this is like an old plantation, because, you know, slaves would have been, you know, serving their masters on that porch. And then the boy and the man have another small conversation. What if there's someone here, Papa? There's no one here. We should go, Papa. We've got to find something to eat. We have no choice. We could find something somewhere else. It's going to be all right. Come on. So they go inside. He's describing what the house looks like on the inside. So plaster and the crown molding on the top of the walls. The dining room. They stood in the door, and this is in the middle of 107. They stood in the doorway. Piled in a windrow in one corner of the room was a great heap of clothing. Foreshadowing. Clothes and shoes, belts, coats, blankets, and old sleeping bags. He would have ample time later to think about that. All right, so even with that sentence, Cormac McCarthy's setting up, it's like, oh, this is intense. The boy hung onto his hand. He was terrified. They crossed the foyer of the room to the far side, walked in, and stood. A great hall of a room with ceilings twice the height of the doors. A fireplace with raw bricks showing where wooden mantel and surround had been pried away and burned. There were mattresses and bedding arranged on the floor in front of the hearth. Papa, the boy whispered. Shh, he said. The ashes were cold. Some blackened pots stood around. I don't want to read everything because that would take a long time. But basically just kind of getting a lay of the house and how there's evidence that there are people there. In the floor of the kitchen was a door or a hatch, and it was locked with a large padlock made of stacked steel plates. He stood looking at it. Papa, the boy said, we should go, Papa. There's a reason this is locked. The boy pulled at his hand. He was almost in tears. Papa, he said, we've got to eat. I'm not hungry, Papa, I'm not. We need to find a pry bar or something. Okay, so this would be the point in the movie. Like, there is a movie, but if you were going to make a movie where maybe you would start kind of putting in creepy music. Because, in the paragraph before that, when they walk into the kitchen, it says, trash piled everywhere, a rust-stained sink, smell of mold and excrement. Excrement is poop. All right, so, it would make sense for a kitchen to smell like mold, but again, we get the tiniest hint that something's not right because it smells like poop in there, and I don't think even, post-apocalyptic, many people would be like, hey, let's go poop in the kitchen. All right, so they go outside, so we get a little, creepy passage, but then they go back outside. And then, again, more little sprinklings of creep factor and foreshadowing that once if you go back and read it, you're like, oh my god. In the yard was an old iron harrow propped up on piers of stacked brick, and someone had wedged between the rails of it a 40-gallon cast iron cauldron of the kind once used for rendering hogs. Underneath the ashes of the fire and a blackened billets of wood. Off to one side, a small wagon with rubber tires. All of these things he saw and did not see. So that means, he looked at all these things, but it wasn't clicking in his mind why they might be there. Now, I don't know if it was your class or I think it might have been your guys' class when we talked about cannibalism in this book. Like, you know it was going to happen. And somebody actually was like, I mean, what does human taste like? And it's a morbid fact, but, you know, if you've ever read stories about, like, real people who, you know, are sick in the head and they were cannibals and, like, murdered people or whatever, they have commonly said that human is very much like pork. So, again, that's another clue. Like, I'm not telling you that just because, like, hey, guys, check out this fact. But the fact that the cast iron cauldron of the kind once used for rendering hogs, that also might be a connection. Like, he saw it and did not see it. Because there's no pigs left on this world. So he found a spade, which is a shovel. He found a spade, took it back into the house. He jammed the blade under the door and pried it up. It was bolted through the wood, and the whole thing came up lock and all. He kicked the blade of the shovel under the edge of the boards and stopped and got his lighter out. Then he stood on the tang of the shovel and raised the edge of the hatch and leaned and got a hold of it. "Papa," the boy whispered. He stopped. "Listen to me," he said. "Just stop it. We're starving. Do you understand?" Then he raised the hatch door and swung it over and let the door fall behind him. "Just wait here," he said. "I'm going with you." "I thought you were scared." "I am scared." "Okay, just stay close beside me." All right, then page 110, 111, this is the real nitty-gritty. He started down the rough wooden steps. He ducked his head and then flicked the lighter and swung the flame out over the darkness like an offering. Coldness and damp, an ungodly stench. The boy clutched at his coat. He could see part of a stone wall, clay floor, an old mattress darkly stained. He crouched and stepped down again and held out the light. Huddled against the back wall were naked people, male and female, all trying to hide, shielding their faces with their hands. On the mattress lay a man with his legs gone to the hip, and the stumps of them blackened and burnt. The smell was hideous. "Jesus," he whispered. Then one by one they turned and blinked in the pitiful light. "Help us," they whispered. "Please help us." "Christ," he said. "Oh, Christ." He turned and grabbed the boy. "Hurry," he said. "Hurry." He dropped the lighter. No time to look. He pushed the boy up the stairs. "Help us," they called. "Hurry." A bearded face appeared blinking at the foot of the stairs. "Please," he called. "Please." "Hurry, for God's sakes, hurry." He shoved the boy through the hatch and sent him sprawling. He stood and got a hold of the door and swung it over and let it slam down, and he turned to grab the boy, but the boy had gotten up and was doing his little dance of terror. "For the love of God, will you come on?" he hissed. But the boy was pointing out the window, and when he looked, he went cold all over. Coming across the field toward the house were 4 bearded men and 2 women. He grabbed the boy by the hand. "Christ," he said, "run! Run!" They tore through the house to the front door and down the steps. Halfway down the drive, he dragged the boy into the field. He looked back. They were partly screened by the ruins of the privet, but he knew that they had minutes at most, and maybe no minutes at all. At the bottom of the field, they crashed through a stand of dead cane and out into the road and crossed the woods on the far side. He redoubled his grip on the boy's wrist. "Run," he whispered. "We have to run." He looked toward the house, but he could see nothing. If they came down the drive, they would see him running through the trees with the boy. This is the moment. This is the moment. He fell to the ground and pulled the boy to him. "Shh," he said. "Shh. Are they going to kill us, Papa? Shh." So another another really key scene from this section is on page 112 to 113. And it's the man and the boy, they're hiding, and the man, he takes the gun and he gives it to the boy. He took the boy's hand and pushed the revolver into it. "Take it," he whispered, "take it." The boy was terrified. He put his arm around him and held him, his body so thin. "Don't be afraid," he said. "If they find you, you're going to have to do it. Do you understand? No crying. Do you hear me? You know how to do it. You put it in your mouth and point it up. Do it quick and hard. Do you understand? Stop crying. Do you understand?" "I think so."